is huge. I'm sure Ghanaians would have to come to terms that we have a long way.
Exactly why I asked him the question about the targets.
And that's what I'm saying, a certain level of humility and coming to the realization that it would take us a little longer than probably ordinarily would have expected. If you look at it from, let me start off this way. 2018, Ghana was among the top 6 fastest growing economies in the world, 2018. In fact, 2019, Ghana's economy was projected as the fastest growing in the whole world. Now, among those countries that Ghana was in the top 6, post-COVID, if you look at the rate of the economic growth, it's far better than Ghana. If you look at it across almost all the indicators, inflation, interest rate, and all of that, it's far better than Ghana. I will tell you why. If you look at what COVID did to Ghana, it's more of what Ghana did as a result of COVID rather than what COVID did. Exactly. And when I put it that way, it's a clear case of Ghana taking advantage of the virus to mess up. And it's quite characteristic of Ghanaian politicians. In crisis moments, we take advantage. You saw what happened in the financial sector cleanup, the total cost at the end of the day, vis-a-vis what we're trying to achieve. And then something, look at it within the energy sector crisis and how we took advantage. Take or pay and all that went with it. Today, the biggest threat to our fiscal space is the energy sector. If you look at the energy sector shortfall, from now to 2026, it's projected to reach around approximately 98 billion cedis in energy sector shortfall that the government have to pay in order to keep the lights on. Then you can across. Okay, so this is the real issue. Even though we've created some space, very expensive through domestic debt restructuring and external debt restructuring, the totality of it is that we have actually pushed the can down the road. And that's why I'm saying that it's a long journey. The headwinds are very real that we need to take into consideration. Look, I mean, if we say no government has borrowed like this government, of course, the size of the economy has not remained the same compared to those other regimes. But if you look at the amount of debt this government has accumulated in the last 7.5 years or so, and you look at the real assets, the underlying assets that we have generated, I don't think we have been prudent. You can't run away from that.
But Prof, we've moved beyond 72 debt to GDP.
Okay. Let me just
continue. Don't respond to him. Just continue.
That's the most important aspect.
Please make a note.
That's the most important aspect.
So, and then if you look at it over time, and you look at the rate of growth of investment in fixed assets vis-a-vis the rate of borrowing, you see the divergence, which tells you that the bulk of the borrowing actually didn't go to enhancing the cash flow generation capacity of the economy. When you borrow largely for consumption and the rest of them, it makes the debt a bad debt. Borrowing, there's nothing wrong with borrowing. You've not committed a sin by going to borrow. We have good debt and we have bad debt. Okay, so the path of making a debt a bad one is what we chose. It's simply because if you look at how much of the borrowing we have done that went into actually investment in enhancing the cash flow generation capacity of the economy and what went into consumption, the rest of them, you see why we are in this mess. So this is what happens. In good times, borrowing is good. In bad times, it magnifies the negative effect of borrowing. So if it hadn't been COVID and Russia, Ukraine, this government would have gotten away with murder because the crisis wouldn't have crystallized within the time that it happened. It would have probably happened, if you look at our projections, 2025, 2026, you would have seen almost all that we are talking about here. But what COVID did was to fast track it, and it happens right in their face. And probably the reason why we're wondering, hey, what do we do? And the rest of them. Look, if you look at COVID, the fiscal deficit Ghana recorded in COVID year is the highest in Africa. It's the highest. If you see the graph, I can show you here. Ghana is an outlier. So the question is, what was this about this virus that made Ghana's expenditure go that high? And it's simply, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
For management and the rest of them. I think we should just admit. Then this is the reality. So what we have done with this debt restructuring is
especially
to just...
when you take into account what Ghana received because of COVID.
In a certain way, you could even say it was a blessing. We made profits.
Some have said so.
Yeah, I lean towards that. If you look at the numbers, even if you look at the shortfall in revenue and what we receive from the IMF and the World Bank and the rest of them, look, if we were prudent and efficient with our expenditure management, Ghana would have recovered out of this COVID and Russia-Ukraine better off. And of course, you can see it in other countries. Rwanda, Cote d'Ivoire. Look, when COVID came, with all the challenges that came and we lost market access, in the first quarter of this year, 3 countries have gone to the Eurobond market, including a tiny country like Benin. Okay, Benin is putting right leadership on the table. Investors are trooping to Benin. Check their numbers. Look at Cote d'Ivoire. Look, Cote d'Ivoire, the president of Cote d'Ivoire, early part of 2022, said, I don't need to govern in 41 ministers. Can you imagine? At the time, we're looking at something more than 88. He reduced it to 31. Okay.
The president was asked to do so to give a certain signal, but he simply didn't listen to anybody.
This is what we call leadership. Look,
people are resigning, he's replacing them and even adding them.
Look, something, we started talking about this actually in the third quarter of 2021, that leadership needs to respond first because hardship lies ahead of us. But there's a way of courting citizens when you first internalize the austerity and then you can get people to follow you.
Okay.
We failed to do that.
All right.